We've just left Egghead Island and Franky got no notable development or improvements. Why is that? What is Oda doing and how will he ever repay us for this treachery? That's the growing sentiment I've been hearing around the block, and today I want to take a more optimistic approach towards this and talk about how he can still collect his Phantom tax. As it stands right now, even though we've left the futuristic Egg Island, the egg is still technically with us, since Vegapunk is the main reason why that place was so advanced in the first place. So the fact that we have Lilith on board the ship means that we can actually get meaningful Franky upgrades at any point in the story as long as she's around. Plus, there's even the brand new, super 4-in-1 Vegapunk that has just made its debut in chapter 1125 as well. Currently, they're most likely on their way to meet with Hardest from Weatheria, so we might not see them for a while, but if we ever meet up with them in the future, then we could also get some juice from them too. Maybe I'm coping a bit too hard when I say this, but I think it makes sense that no major developments happened with Franky on Egghead, given the fact that we only had around 24 hours on the island, and for a majority of them, we were being assaulted by an endless amount of Marines and world government operatives. But now that everything has seemingly calmed down, I think it's time to finally focus on Franky's future. Franky's dream, and the reason why he set sail in the first place, was to simply pull off the same feats that his mentor Tom did. Back in Water 7, Franky, as a kid, said that he wants to build a ship of dreams, a ship that'll face all kinds of battles, hardships, and that will eventually make it to the end of the ocean. Even if the ship is falling apart, he wants that ship to glow brighter than any other ship in the world. This is the feat that Tom managed to accomplish with the Oro Jackson, so boiling this down, Franky wants to be just like his mentor and do things with a dawn. As it stands, Franky's dream is pretty simple. That's why I want to talk about how it could be expanded upon now that the climate of the world is shifting. Or should I say, sinking. So in chapter 1123, we saw that the Stella Vegapunk knew that he was going to perish on the island. And with that becoming a reality, he, Shaka, and Pythagoras all agreed that they needed to safeguard their cloud loft technology, which is used to create artificial island clouds since it may become pivotal in saving humanity in the near future. After that scene, we got no other panels mentioning this technology. So what's become of it? And how did they end up safeguarding it? Even though the 4-in-1 Super Ultra Vegapunk blasted off into the sky thanks to the cloud technology, they don't have the building that produced the clouds with them. So even if they make it to their destination, they'll still need to recreate it in the end. So again, how are they going to do this and who will usher it in? Well, there are many possibilities when it comes to this that we'll touch on later. But as far as the focus of this video goes, I want to hone in on the thought that the Straw Hats, more specifically Franky and Lilith, have and will don the Cloud Loft technology in the future. So first things first, even though the cloud tech that was mentioned is indeed the building we saw Edison in chapter 1114, that building can always be rebuilt on other islands as long as they know how to. With Lilith being a Vegapunk, I believe that there's a high likelihood that she'd know how to craft more cloud tech if given the chance. Given the fact that Punk Records is in the safe hands of the hyper 4-in-1 Vegapunk and not York's at the moment, we have a good reason to believe that Lilith has unfiltered Punk Record knowledge. Plus, they did say that York still can access it, so Lilith having access to it as well is a bit of a no-brainer. So when it comes to Lilith recreating cloud tech, all she'd need is a competent engineer that can follow instructions. And what better engineer is there in the world than Franky? So this line of needing competent engineers stems from chapter 1062 when we first met Atlas. She was talking about how they were incapable of mass-producing the food machines here on Egghead Island due to bad workers who can't follow blueprints. That is something I found quite noteworthy, since Franky is not only known for blueprinting many ships in the past, but also for copying Vegapunk technology. This is the whole reason why Franky looks the way he does today, because he used Vegapunk's blueprints on Karakuri Island to reconfigure his body. He has first-hand experience when it comes to recreating Vegapunk tech. One thing I found even more interesting is that Franky, and the good timeline variants that Oda drew in the SBS section, is even shown with island heating technology just like Egghead Island's aircon technology. This technology is something that not even Vegapunk could achieve back when he was in Baltimore at the time, as stated by the residents of that island. So Franky being able to recreate Vegapunk's inventions isn't that far-fetched. The fun aspect of Franky recreating the Cloud Loft building would be that he'd be able to put his own spin on it. From what we saw, the Cloud Loft building looks like a giant wine bottle, I like to think that if Franky were to recreate this, the bottle would end up becoming a giant cola bottle. The other reason stated by Atlas as to why they couldn't mass produce some of their technology is due to lack of money and resources. But here's the thing. I actually believe that the Straw Hats might have all the resources they need already on board the Thousand Sunny. So one thing I often laughed at while on this island is the fact that Jinbei was on luggage duty for a majority of the time. With the marine invasion taking place on Egghead, I thought it was absolutely silly that someone as strong as Jinbei was seemingly sidelined. In chapter 1093, it was shown that Jinbei was preoccupied moving Vegapunk's boxes onto the Thousand Sunny. At the time, it felt like a nothing burger since Stella was still alive. Like no joke, I asked a few friends what was in the boxes months ago, and they said it was probably just Vegapunk's clothes or his toiletries. The reason why I didn't put much thought into those boxes is because I felt like Stella would survive somehow. But that wasn't reality. The Stella Vegapunk died. He wanted to die here so that his message would be broadcasted around the world. So, what would a dead man want Jinbei to put on the Thousand Sunny well in advance? Those boxes could have contained blueprints to his inventions, artificial gems that Nami could sell for a profit, Gwyneth Paltrow's head, or maybe even the resources necessary to recreate the Cloudloft technology. If that is what Jinbei delivered onto the Thousand Sunny, then it makes sense to give him such an important task. With those blueprints on board, the Straw Hats would then be capable of building clouds for the future. But here's the truth. Franky and Lilith going around the world and creating cloud islands for all of humanity isn't that plausible. That right there would take way too much time if the Straw Hats were made to backtrack to every island they've previously been on. That is why it's so great that the other Vegapunks managed to survive in chapter 1125 alongside Punk Records. The responsibility of saving all of humanity from the flood isn't entirely on the Straw Hats' hands. While Megapunk was last seen contacting Hardis at Witheria, we aren't privy as to what their current goal or destination is truly. Because, going back to the beginning of the arc, Vegapunk also contacted Dragon, so who knows what Megamind is truly scheming up there in the clouds. No matter where they end up though, I do believe that the Megapunks will recreate the cloud technology and save many islands with it. Mainly because this is tied to one of the sins that Vegapunk talked about in his broadcast. So, Vegapunk traveling the world while giving people clouds and absolving this sin would be quite fitting. As far as Lilith goes though, what happens to her? Will she simply be left behind by the group? I don't believe so. In fact, I can envision a future where Lilith tries to assist them, but on a separate front and with the help of Franky. So the idea I want to propose is that maybe Franky turns the Thousand Sunny into a cloud-producing ship. Ever since we got the bounty posters in chapter 1058, people have been wondering what was up with Franky's poster. Instead of it being an image of him, it was actually of the Thousand Sunny. Here's the thing. Oda has used bounty posters in the past as a way to hint at future events. We had that with the introduction of Duval through Sanji's scuffed image, and we even got a hint at Sanji's royal lineage when it was declared he was only wanted alive. Even Franky's previous bounty poster of General Franky held significance since that is what he used to take down Sasaki in the following arc. So Franky, having the Thousand Sunny as his new image should come into play somehow. And what better way than by having him upgrade his ship of dreams? This endeavor could lead to the character growth and developments that people were expecting for Franky back on Egghead Island. Before we talk more about Franky though, I just gotta say that just like him, I have personal development goals and hiccups that I really want to work on. Whether it's striving for a healthier work-life balance, managing stress, or just improving your mental well-being, sometimes achieving those goals can be hard. But that is where therapy comes in. Therapy is a safe space where you can share your mind without the fear of being judged and is a perfect tool for personal growth. They've been around for a while and you've probably heard of them, but their process has improved immensely over the past few years. And that's why I'm proud to present today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. They make starting therapy easier and accessible for everyone. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform that you can trust. Starting therapy is easy. All you have to do is fill out a questionnaire, and you will be then matched with a therapist that fits your specific needs in just a couple of days. Whether you prefer traditional phone calls, video chats, or even messaging, they've got you covered. And if you ever feel like your therapist isn't quite right for you, you can switch them with just a click and at no cost. Investing in your mental health is one of the best decisions you could ever make. If you're ready to take charge of your own mental health and start living a happier and healthier life, then click the link in the description below or visit betterhelp.com/SYV to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring today's video. So getting right back to it, the Thousand Sunny has 6 docking stations, all of which houses a different invention. Docking Station 1 houses the Shiro Mokuba, which is a waiver they got back in Skypiea. Docking Station 2 is the Mini Mary. Docking Station 3 is the Shark Submarine. Docking 4 is the Black Rhino. Docking 5 is the Brachio Tank. And then there's finally Docking Station 6, which stores a non-canon inflatable pool. Yeah, I'm not joking, but Docking 6 is an actual inflatable pool which exists on a ship that is constantly surrounded by water. Learning about this was one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-boggling experiences I've had in a minute. It felt like I was hit by Gojo's domain expansion Infinity, where I was just paralyzed for a brief moment due to this information. I might have to schedule a BetterHelp trip just to bring my mental state back to normal. The inflatable pool is something probably no one knew about beforehand, simply because it was a part of Filmzy's promo, and this episode, titled Glorious Island, was originally only shown on smartphones. The reason I'm harping on this pool so much is simply because it's the one docking station that is actually useless. I don't know when's the last time we used the Shiro Mokuba or the Mini Mary, but at least they have some functionality, unlike this pool in the middle of the ocean. With the pool being expendable, I think this could be a sign that they'll end up using Docking Station 6 for cloud technology instead. And to be fair, Franky has changed up the docking stations before, since during the pre-time skip era, there was no Docking Station 5 or 6, and instead, they were both Docking Station 0, which housed the Thousand Sunny's paddle wheels. Docking station aside, even if we don't end up putting the cloud technology there, we could always just fit it onto the ship some other way. I mean, Roger carried a giant egg on his ship for a good chunk of his journey, so the Straw Hats lugging around a cloud machine seems pretty plausible to me. If this does end up becoming the case, Franky might even be able to modify the cloud technology to where it would leave a trail of clouds behind us, behind the Thousand Sunny. This would be akin to the cloud dials we saw on Skypiea. The warriors used it to fly into the sky and actually left a tangible path of clouds behind them in the process. So perhaps the Thousand Sunny gets an upgrade that allows it to take off into the sky, leaving a cloud path behind itself so that others can sail into the heavens with us. Whitebeard had multiple ships bubble-coated and traveled underwater to Marineford. Imagine how crazy it would be if the Straw Hats alongside the Grand Fleet showed up to the final war by traveling among the clouds. If Franky upgrades the Thousand Sunny to do this here on Elbaf, then Franky would be mimicking the many famous Norse paintings like Ride of the Valkyries. Most depictions of Norse gods and Valkyries all take place in the sky among the clouds, so this would be very fitting for the Straw Hats to be the leaders of this venture. If the Giants truly worship the Sun God and follow Luffy into the final war alongside his Nakama, then it'd be fitting for the Norse-inspired Giants to be in the clouds with us. This idea may sound ludicrous at first, but it is actually quite reminiscent of the Vegapunk 8 that was seen back in chapter 1094. Vegapunk's whip had wheels that allowed it to ride on literal clouds, so applying that technology to the Thousand Sunny to have it become a cloud ship is quite possible. Another reason why I think this has some validity to it is because Vegapunk's technology actually runs quite close to what Franky has created thus far. When we first arrived on this futuristic island, the first invention we ran into was Vegapunk's living shark, which had the number 03 stamped on its side. I believe this is supposed to mirror Franky's Shark Submarine, which just so happens to be in the Thousand Sunny's Docking Station 3. Then, we have the Vegaforce 1, which is literally just a bigger and better version of Franky's General Franky. Then of course, there's the flower tank that Vegapunk made back in the Neomads cover story, which parallels Franky's Brachio tank, and then going back to the future versions of Franky, he and Vegapunk were both able to cook up island heating technology. Franky copying Vegapunk and or riffing on his designs has been written in the stars essentially. Plus, if we add in the idea that Franky is Queen's son, then this could become even more meaningful. Instead of looking up to his biological father, he looks up to his father's rival, Vegapunk. If you're unfamiliar with this theory, that's alright because I'll hit the cliff notes real quick. When Franky told us his backstory initially, he told us that he was abandoned by his parents when he was 10, which was 26 years ago. Franky currently is 36. And then in the latest Vivre card data book, it was revealed that Queen had a son 36 years ago and abandoned them when they were 10. This timeline is so specific that it can really only be Franky that is Queen's son. Add in all the outside parallels like Franky posed up in volume 39, exactly like the inverse volume 93's Queen, the fact that they both love dancing, both are cyborgs, have the same blood type, and add in the fact that Franky was one of the characters who never saw Queen in Wano, then you've got yourself a pretty conclusive theory. I didn't discover any of this on my own, mind you. These were all just clues I found while searching through many older theories regarding this topic. You gotta admit though, this does fall in line with how Oda writes families in the series. Ace looked up to Whitebeard, who was Roger's rival. Shanks looks up to Roger, who was Figarland's foe. Franky, looking up to Vegapunk, who is Queen's scientific rival, just falls into place nicely. Franky, heralding Vegapunk's technology, would be the biggest middle finger he could throw into his father's face. If, of course, they even know each other still exists. While they're both present in Wano and might have caught a glimpse of one another, there's no way they would have even recognized each other since they both look very different from their past versions. And because Franky is a pseudonym, with his birth name actually being Cuddy Flam. Another reason why I think this could be a great idea is because of something my good friend Dax Sake mentioned when I brought this idea to him. He reminded me that Franky's mentor, Tom, created what he called the Hope of Water 7 before his untimely demise. This hope was the Sea Train. The Sea Train was a miracle project at the time because no one before him ever thought of or even tried to bridge islands together. But Tom did. This one train saved Water 7 from ruin, since up until that point, the city couldn't properly trade with neighboring islands due to harsh ocean currents, sea kings, and weather. This train was rightfully named the Puffing Tom in honor of his monumentous achievement. This same train was later destroyed during the Straw Hats' raid on Enies Lobby, so afterwards they had to make a new one, which we saw in chapter 656's cover page story. This new train was aptly named the Puffing Ice, since Iceberg was the main creator this time around. And you might see where I'm going with this, but I believe that Franky's invention that creates a pathway of clouds will be named the Puffing Franky, to join in his best friend and mentor's legacy. First, there was the Puffing Tom, then there was the Puffing Ice, and lastly, I think we will get the Puffing Franky. Also, I do gotta say, but the term puffing that is in the Sea Train's name is quite fitting, since they are steam trains which produce steam clouds. So Franky, giving his cloud technology the epithet puffing as well, just makes so much sense. Tom and Iceberg made trains that provided safe passage across the oceans. Franky, with the help of Lilith, will create clouds that will provide safe passage into the skies. Franky, when he first declared his dreams, said that he wanted his ship to glow brighter than any other ship in the world. So by him riding the Thousand Sunny into the sky, it would quite literally make it the brightest ship in the world, and even better, but this ship would be doing it with a dawn. And you gotta admit, it would be quite fitting for a ship named the Thousand Sunny, since of course the sun belongs in the sky among the clouds. And hey, if there was ever a time to upgrade the Thousand Sunny and pimp this ship out, it would be here at our next destination, Elbaf. Elbaf is rumored to house the legendary Atom Tree, so if this process does end up requiring resources, then perhaps we could gather them here. This right here could even be a good excuse for the crew's prolonged stay on the island. Usopp can finally take the time to become a brave warrior. Robin can take some time and hang out with Saul. Zoro can drain the giants of all the alcohol they have on the island. Sanji can learn new recipes and get bored by giant women. Luffy can learn about the sun god and fall asleep. And then there's Franky, who can spend some time with Lilith and upgrade the Thousand Sunny, and maybe even himself. So I kinda wish I had put this segment earlier in the video, but now is a good time to talk about it. But I have always been a solid believer that Franky will upgrade his body one last time in the story. So Franky has always had a silly weakness, that being that his back is completely unmodified and vulnerable to attacks because he was unable to modify it since he can't reach it. We first learned about this at Water 7, but it is a problem that even his newest post-time skip body has as well. since in chapter 775, Senor Pink tries to exploit this glaring weakness. Now that we have an actual genius engineer, that being Vegapunk, aboard the Thousand Sunny, I think it's time we get rid of this weakness. Since Franky's body was modified using Vegapunk's blueprints as an inspiration, Vegapunk can also be the one to finally complete him. Franky getting a cloud jetpack like the Vegaforce ones, or maybe even just new weapons attached to his backside, could be possible, since we don't exactly know what was on those blueprints. Maybe we could even take a wilder approach when it comes to modifying Franky, like perhaps he gets the green blood we saw the Seraphim utilizing back on Egghead. Franky already uses cola as a fuel source, so the incorporation of green blood shouldn't be too tough of a modification. We saw that back in Dressrosa, Franky said that he did not want to eat a devil fruit since that would rob him of his ability to swim. But with green blood, he could possibly bypass this downside by simply switching the green blood out of his system when need be. Perhaps he could even carry on Kuma's legacy to an extent, and Lilith equips him with light beam technology, or Kuma's devil fruit, in the form of green blood. There's even a reality that exists where he gets the bubble shield technology that the Mark III Pacifista have, so that Franky can finally box devil fruit users without the need of armament hockey. I know, I just threw out like 5 different ideas in the span of a minute, but that's what's so fun about Franky's character, and how endless the possibilities are now that we have Vegapunk-Lilith with us. All of this was essentially to say that just because we've left Egghead Island doesn't mean that it is over for Franky. Vegapunk was responsible for creating the most powerful beings, with those being the Seraphim, so who's to say that they can't immensely boost Franky into becoming the world's strongest cyborg? Not like he has much competition outside of Queen. So now, time to talk about the last reason why I believe a Franky upgrade will be in the near future. And that reason is because of Wapple.
What?
Yes, Wapple. I bet you didn't expect him to be mentioned in this video, did ya? So, Wapple, Morgans, and Vivi are currently traveling to God knows where. Every time we've seen them, they've made no mention of where they want to land or go. That being said, there are a good group of people out there that believe that Vivi would want to reunite with the Straw Hats here on Elbaf. If that does end up becoming true, then Wapple will be right there alongside her. I know what you're thinking. What could this loser possibly offer in the final saga? Well, I'd like to remind you that Wapple is partially responsible for why the General Franky is so strong. So it was revealed in chapter 636 that the General Franky is composed and made of Wapple metal. That's right, one of the best materials in the world actually came out of Wapple. A quick refresher on Wapple's ability, but his devil fruit allows him to eat and then turn whatever he eats into a brand new creation by combining whatever's in his stomach. Wapple metal was conceived way back in chapter 248's cover page story, where Wapple consumed trash to subside his hunger. This then, in the next few cover pages, led to him accidentally creating the brand new super alloy known as Wapple metal, which is actually a huge reason why he was able to become a king that could attend the reverie. So if Wapple tags along with Vivi and comes to Elbaf, then perhaps he could make Franky and Lilith either more Wapple metal, or perhaps an even more powerful metal that we have not seen yet before. Technically, Wapple could even eat chunks of the Atom Tree and create a new wood that is even more powerful. Wapple could be a genuine reason why Franky and the Thousand Sunny could receive meaningful upgrades. Why would he do this? Well, probably because he wants to be protected from the world government, and because he doesn't really have anywhere else to go. But hey, those are just my thoughts on Franky and what the future could hold for him. Let me know what you guys thought about this video down below. What are your personal thoughts on Franky? Do you think he's perfect the way he is, or no, do you think he does need some sort of upgrade or ship upgrade now that we're in the final stretch of the story? I would love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comment section. If you like the video, please hit like. If you dislike it, dislike it. And I will catch you guys on the next One Piece Theory video. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.